So your business is underwater and you owe more people money than you can afford to pay. You have no choice but to file for bankruptcy. What does this mean for the company? I'm Kalila Reynolds and it's time for another episode of Money Moves JA, brought to you in partnership with EXIM Bank's Business Advisory Service, giving you the tools to grow your business. Joining me now to discuss how you can file for bankruptcy, we have immediate past president of the Jamaican Bar Association and head of litigation at DunnCox, Emile Leiba. Hi Emile, welcome to Money Moves with EXIM.
Hi Kalila, happy to be here.
So let's start off very basic. What is bankruptcy?
Bankruptcy is the kind of end of a process that starts with insolvency. There is an insolvency regime that's been in place since 2015 in Jamaica, which allows businesses which get into difficulties to restructure, gives them some breathing space before their assets are liquidated to pay creditors.
Okay, so bankruptcy is the last step in that process?
Yes, ideally it would be before the Insolvency Act came into force. Bankruptcy would be the only process. So you'd go and they make something called a triple order, and you'd be declared an absolute bankrupt, and the trustee in bankruptcy would now own all your assets and basically be in control of all your assets. Since 2015, they have put in place a regime that helps, that will automatically stay creditors from enforcing against you. So let's say your business is in trouble, the bank is about to sell your asset that you provided as security. You can file a notice with the Office of the Supervisor of Insolvency, who can then, it will then stay, meaning that it will suspend those proceedings, get your property out of auction, get you a little breathing space in order to formulate a proposal for your creditors that they may or may not accept.
And so how long does that typically take?
The process, I think there's a 14-day stay, and you can get extensions of 30 days or more in terms of putting together the proposal. Because a lot of it is really identifying what you have, what's liquid, what's not liquid, and payment terms for your creditors. So that process can take a while in order for you to have a clear picture as to what's coming in, what's going out, and that type of thing. It also helps if you keep books, proper accounting books. Which many Jamaican businesses unfortunately don't necessarily have.
All right, so once that process is exhausted and we get to the point of now you're saying you're bankrupt basically, what does that mean?
So what that means is that you're now engaging the court process, where there's an order that is made that you be declared bankrupt. So bankruptcy is a temporary state of being, whereby, I said, your assets are liquidated in order to satisfy your creditors. Many times in a bankruptcy situation, there are insufficient assets to satisfy creditors. So creditors may well be paid what they call pennies on the dollar. So for every dollar you're owed, maybe you're paid 50 cents or 60 cents, and your assets are liquidated in order to satisfy your creditors. And then at the end of that process, you are discharged. So it is not something for ever and ever and ever. But if you're declared bankrupt, for example, you can't practice law. I believe so there are the limitations in terms of positions that you can hold if it is that you are declared bankrupt.
But you said that it's a temporary position, so is it that you can't practice law or whatever other limitations for a specific amount of time, or does that hang over your head forever?
Well, it depends. If it can affect things like you being fit and proper in a financial institution. If you have ever been declared bankrupt, is one of the things that you'd have to disclose. If you want to work at a bank, I know people are looking for an NCB job now, with that whole anti-vax discussion. And so you can't go and work in certain positions in a bank without being fit and proper. And if you have been declared bankrupt, that is something that can affect your ability. Similarly, with law, if you have been declared bankrupt, during that period, you couldn't practice law, but you could perhaps apply for reconsideration subsequently.
All right, so let's say you have been declared bankrupt and your assets have been sold to satisfy whatever obligations you have to your creditors. Certainly, as you pointed out, it likely would not be enough to satisfy the debt that you owe. But now you have reemerged 2 years later with a new business. Can they still come after you then for the balance? How does that work?
No, well, if it is that you have payments have been made under the bankruptcy regime, it generally would be in settlement of that. So it would conclude that. But if you have, of course, acquired new debts, then those new debts would be payable in full. But once that bankruptcy process has been completed, then that would normally be at an end.
Okay, so they can't come after your new successful business after the fact once you've already settled with them under a bankruptcy?
Generally, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can a bankruptcy be withdrawn?
Yes, there are certain circumstances. Let's say, for example, you win the lottery. And you suddenly have, sufficient assets to settle all your creditors, or something else gets liquidated, or perhaps even with the assistance of a family member or friends, they pull together and they pull you out of it. So once it is that your creditors have been satisfied, so that's the most important aspect of insolvency, bankruptcy, is satisfying your creditors. Once you owe, that's when you always would have that potential difficulty.
How common is it in Jamaica for people or businesses to file for bankruptcy?
Certainly before the Insolvency Act, it was not common. It was not something that a debtor would voluntarily do, right? But now under the new insolvency regime, there has been an increase. I wouldn't say it's very common, because there's still this concept of it being a negative thing. Because you have bankruptcy in the context of, like in the US, what they call Chapter 11, where it is
You hear like Donald Trump has filed for bankruptcy many times.
Quite exactly, which is a debtor protection mechanism, as versus bankruptcy as it used to exist in Jamaica, which is a debtor protection mechanism. So if I acted for a client, I'd get a judgment. That judgment is not satisfied, meaning that the person hasn't paid it, then I can now apply to put that person or company in bankruptcy, and then the trustee in bankruptcy would now take over their assets and sell everything possible.
Oh, I didn't know that a creditor could apply for that on behalf of...
Could initiate bankruptcy proceed, yes.
I thought you had to do it yourself. You had to be the one to initiate it.
No, in Jamaica that's not how it historically was. It was a creditor's remedy. So when if you owe me money and I now go to court, I get a judgment against you, you don't satisfy the judgment, then that now could be what they call a method, well, not quite a method of enforcement, but a method by which I could secure the money that is unpaid.
I see. Okay, so you learn something new every single day. So once I've filed for bankruptcy, do I have to notify all my shareholders and parties connected to the business? Do I legally have to do that?
Well, let's put it this way. If it is a business, you're in receivership now. Your name literally changes. So you are, ABC Limited in receivership. And there's someone called a receiver who now replaces your board of directors. So all your creditors and so on would be notified. They'd call in and identify. So everyone who you owe money. So you don't need to tell your mother, but unless you owe her money too. But all your creditors would be notified that the company has now been placed in receivership, or if you're an individual, you've been declared bankrupt, and so you are no longer able to manage your own affairs as a bankrupt.
Interesting. And are there any penalties if you don't notify those people?
Well, it's no longer in your hands. So you're basically, the analogy, you're a child once more. A grown-up is now taking care of your affairs. So
the receiver will do that.
So the receiver will do that, the liquidator will do that, the trustee in bankruptcy would do that. So they're now managing you, basically. And so they would send out all the notices and so on. So you no longer have control over your assets. They can now sell your house, your car, virtually everything other than the clothes on your back, conceptually, in order to liquidate your expenses and your obligations.
Everything, but if we're talking about a business, they can sell everything the business owns, right?
Right. So, well, in Jamaica, you have this concept of operating a business, but it's a business name, but it's really you, right? As versus
That would be under a
incorporating
sole
a company.
proprietorship?
Right, exactly.
If you're a limited liability company,
Limited liability company,
they can't sell your personal assets.
Exactly, exactly. So, as a limited liability company, sell the company assets. If you are Emile Leiba trading as, EGRL Limited, well, you can't trade as EGRL Limited, but EGRL Enterprises, then they can then go after my personal assets. So that's why you have to, end how you, or start where you want to end. So if you can see yourself operating at a certain level and you want to start a certain size business, then it makes sense to, for example, incorporate a company so that you can separate the liability. And so any creditors would be limited to to going after the assets of the company.
Understood. Well, thank you so much for clarifying this, Emile.
My pleasure.
Very useful.
My pleasure.
And it's nice to meet you for the first time in
Indeed
person.
it is. Indeed it is. The pleasure is mine.
All right, good. And here's a recap of some of Emile's key points. Bankruptcy is simply a financial option available when you're truly unable to honor your debt. People file for bankruptcy because of overcommitment of credit, medical reasons, the breakdown of a relationship, or loss of employment. Filing a notice with the Office of the Supervisor of Insolvency will allow you to suspend proceedings to get your property out of auction. This gives you time to formulate a proposal for your creditors. When in bankruptcy, a receiver will manage the business with the objective of recouping money for the creditors. And that's it for this episode of Money Moves JA, brought to you in partnership with EXIM Bank's Business Advisory Service, giving you the tools to grow your business. If you're interested in a loan product for your own business, visit eximbankja.com or drop me a DM. Also visit my website, KalilaReynolds.com, for a summary of this episode. You can click the link in the description box below. I'm Kalila Reynolds. Until next time.
Let's get this money.